Hello and welcome to part 7 of the Adobe FrameMaker Essentials webinar series. My name is Barb Binder and I'll be your host for this session. If you've attended the other webinars, then welcome back. If this is your first one, please be aware that there are 6 previous webinars that have been posted up on YouTube. You can track them down by just searching for Adobe FrameMaker Essentials. And if you haven't been to these webinars before, very briefly, my name is Barb Binder. I live in the mountains west of Denver in Colorado. I am the owner and lead instructor at Rocky Mountain Training. We offer online training classes on the Adobe Creative Cloud applications and the Adobe TechCom Suite applications. I teach the ones that you see the icons for there. I'm an Adobe community expert, which means I volunteer time on the Adobe community forums to answer questions. I spend most of my time on the InDesign and FrameMaker pages. So if you haven't seen me there yet and you have a question, you probably will. And I've been an Adobe certified instructor on those 5 applications since 1997, which means Adobe thinks I'm an expert in these programs. You can decide for yourself if you think I am. If you would like to stay in touch, you can take a screenshot of this page. You'll see my email and my website. I do maintain a blog, and the purpose of the blog is to post questions asked by my students after they've attended a training class with me. I've been posting questions on FrameMaker since 2009. So if you have a FrameMaker question, you might have already run across the Rocky Mountain Training blog, or maybe you'll see it in the future. It's a great free resource for you. And another great resource to be aware of are the community forums. The website is community.adobe.com. Just scroll all the way down to FrameMaker and then click on discussions. This is a great place to go to look and see what other people have asked about FrameMaker. You can find a wealth of information there. And you can also post your own questions. I'm one of many who try to stop by every day to answer user questions. And if I haven't seen you there yet, hopefully I will see you there soon. So let's move on to the topic at hand, which is using templates in FrameMaker. Here are my objectives for this session. I'd like to cover why to consider using templates. I'd like to look over the standard templates with you. I'd like to show you how to locate additional templates, including some that are on your hard drive right now, if you have FrameMaker installed that you might not have noticed yet, as well as templates that are available for purchase. And finally, I'd like to finish up by talking about how to create your own templates. So, why use templates? A primary reason that people use templates for FrameMaker is to achieve consistent formatting in your documentation. Most of us work on books, and our books have lots of chapters, and we want them all to have the same look and feel. The content is going to change, of course, but we want the same formatting for the first chapter as for the last chapter. And those of you who work with multiple products might have multiple books, and so that template could be used in a variety of different book projects. Or maybe you've got different kinds of templates for different situations. It's very flexible. But if you're looking for consistency in how you're formatting your documentation, a template is a great way to get there. Now, those of you who are intermediate to advanced might think, well, I don't need a template. I can just use file, import formats. Yes, you can. One of FrameMaker's strengths, in my opinion, is the file import formats command, because you can import formatting whichever categories you want from one file to another. And if you work alone, just you and FrameMaker all by yourself, that might be a fine way to work. But in a work group environment, that starts to fall apart, because you might have some people who will work from a template. Some are importing formats in, others are making up their own formats, others are using overrides. It's harder to control a group. So especially in a group environment, I definitely think templates are the way to go. I use them on my own, though. It's just me and my computer. I still work from templates because it keeps me consistent as well. Now, we all know that person doesn't want to follow rules. If you've got a maverick in your office and you realize that they are changing things in the FrameMaker document they're not supposed to, you can re-import a template into a document and remove overrides in the process, thereby making their file compliant to what the template is supposed to do for formatting. And then the last item I added here is one I see in my classes all the time. I have students coming to me to learn FrameMaker. A lot of them are in offices that are already using FrameMaker and they're a new hire. But I also get students who are the first person in their office to go to FrameMaker. And those people are in charge of making the templates for their office. They're new and they're scared and they're looking at a blank document and they're not really sure what to do. Finding a template and then customizing it can be a great way to go. And then once they get their template developed, they're going to benefit from all the other things I just mentioned. So what I'd like to do is begin by looking over the standard templates with you. And these are the ones you probably are familiar with. There is an option in the new dialog box or on the welcome screen to open up the standard templates. They're going to fall into two categories. They're the original standard templates, and these have been part of FrameMaker since I started using it in the early 90s. These templates have been around for a really long time. And then there are also the newer standard templates. Now, they're not that new. They were designed, or they were shipped with FrameMaker 12, I believe. We are up to version 17, so they aren't that new, but they're fresher than the original templates. And I think there's some things in there that are worth talking about. And some of them you might like to use to start new documents from. So let's begin by taking a look at those. I'm in FrameMaker 2022 or version 17, which is the latest version as of this recording. What I'll be talking about in terms of templates is not unique to this version. You can take advantage of what I'm going to talk about in basically any version of FrameMaker that still runs. So don't go away if you're on an earlier version. When you're looking for the templates that ship with FrameMaker, the first place you're going to probably find them is going to be in the standard templates dialog box. There's a button right here on your welcome screen. There's also a button to access it if you go to File, New Document. It'll be on the bottom left. It'll say Explore Standard Templates. I'm going to go ahead and click it from here. And this opens up a dialog box that's going to allow us to look over the templates. Now, the organization is as follows. The left column has template names. The middle column has the features that are included in the template. And the right column shows you a small picture or a thumbnail of a completed version of the template. There are 3 of these sheets. This is sheet 1. When I click the down button, this is sheet 2. If I click the down button again, this is sheet 3. And of course, the up button is going to go back up again. I'm going to skip the first sheet initially and focus on the second 2 sheets because these are what I referred to as the original standard templates. When I first started using FrameMaker in the 90s, these were all in here. They looked just like this. Now, they're dated. There's no question they're dated. I still want to talk about them because they have some things that I think are worth knowing if you've overlooked them. But just looking at the names of the business documents, memo, fax, envelope, in the 80s, when FrameMaker was created, people were still trying to figure out how to create these kinds of things. And so FrameMaker might have been an option. No one's opening up FrameMaker in 2023 to create a memo, but let me click it anyway, because what I want to show you in terms of how this dialog box works in general is, again, the names in the left column. The middle column shows you the features. And in this business memo, which you may never want to fill out and send to anybody, you can see how the current date will appear automatically, how memo labels appear automatically when you press return, and then, less important, the design matches these other guys. Now, along the bottom, the done button means, never mind, I don't want to use this template. I want to go someplace else. Create and Show Sample are the 2 remaining buttons. If we click on Show Sample, for any of the templates I'm talking about in this dialog box, you're going to get a copy of the template with dummy text inside, so you can take a look at it and think, do I like that typeface? How about the line spacing? What are tables going to look like? What are bullets going to look like? What are numbered lists going to look like? It gives you a sense of what this would look like if it had your content in there. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Now, when I return to standard templates, the other button is create. And again, for all of the templates, if you click create, you get an empty version of the same template. And so here is the empty version of that memo template. Now, I'm agreeing with you, I'm sure, that you're not going to create a memo in FrameMaker. But the reason I'm bringing up these older templates is because all of them have something to teach you if you're willing to look at them. For example, for a new FrameMaker user who's trying to figure out how to get the date to appear in a document, that's using the FrameMaker date variable. It's on the master page, and it's looking at my computer clock. So even though this was designed years ago, it knows the date of the recording. If I come in here and I start adding some content, let's say I want to send myself the memo, and I type in Barb and I press enter, and I type in from you and I press enter, and it's about FrameMaker, and I'm going to CC somebody or not, and then press enter. What you can see is that that template was automatically assigning labels when I press the enter key. So here, this little memo is showing you two cool features. One, that you can tell a paragraph what paragraph should follow when you press enter. So if I'm on a paragraph that is using a style called Memo 2, and I press the enter key or the return key, then it's going to automatically assign a style called Memo From without me having to go over and pick a style. That's worth knowing in other kinds of documents. And FrameMaker can put words in front. And we use this all the time for words like notes and important and caution and warning. And then finally, if I zoom out a bit, you'll see that I've got a footer over on the left. Now, this is a rotated footer. A footer normally goes in the bottom margin. Word can't rotate a footer, and FrameMaker is just showing off here because it can. So that's a footer frame that's been rotated and put in the left margin. And if I were to change the content on the first line up here, I'll just type in RMT for Rocky Mountain Training, and not make you watch all my typos. If I type that content in and then I refresh, which is window refresh or Control L, this little memo is showing how FrameMaker can pull content off the page. Now, again, with some knowledge of FrameMaker, you can pick this apart. You can go check out the paragraph styles and see how they did the words and the automatic assignment of styles. You can go look at the reference pages and see where this line came from. And you can go to the master pages and see how these variables were set up. This little memo is still worthwhile, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to not save that and go back to templates. And I feel that way about all the old templates. There are things in here you might find handy. There's a plain report. There's a numeric report. And the numeric report has numbered headings. So if I show you a sample, you can see that the headings have numbers on them. And we get a lot of questions on the forums about how to number headings. This document will show you how to do it. All you need to do is click on a paragraph style that has a number, go over to your paragraph designer and click numbering properties, and then you can figure out how they did it, which I think is really helpful. Keep in mind, you can import all the formatting from one file to another. So you could import all these paragraph styles from one file to another if you wanted to get these definitions in your document, or you could recreate them from scratch. But one other feature that not everyone knows about is that you can copy and paste styles. You can do this with both paragraph styles as well as character styles. So if I wanted this definition for this heading, which is a heading 1 in my document, I could go to the edit menu, I could pick copy special, and I could say, I want to pick up that paragraph format. And by the way, Adobe calls paragraph formats, paragraph tags, and paragraph styles. It's confusing, but those are all synonyms, and you'll hear me switch between them because they're worded differently in different places. It's not consistent. But when it says paragraph format here, it means a paragraph style coming out of the paragraph catalog. Anyway, I'm going to copy the paragraph format or paragraph style. I will then go and make a new document, just a blank portrait page. I'll type in some text. And then when I paste, I'm not pasting in words or a picture. I'm pasting in that paragraph style. You can see it's right here with the definition. Now, in case this is a new feature from you, when you are copying styles from one document to another, you want to glance down and make sure there's not a star in front of the new style name. If the star is there, it either indicates that there's an override or that the style is not in your catalog, or both. You'd want to make sure you go to the paragraph designer and apply to add the style to the catalog, and then update it. So now I'm back on the welcome screen. I'm going to return to standard templates, and I want to come down to the next property sheet and just want to briefly show you Outline Harvard and Outline Numeric. Outline Harvard, if I show sample, is going to demonstrate how to set up an outline. And this is a complex numbering scenario where the numbers are incrementing, but it's not showing the previous number. So it goes from an I to an A to a 1. It has 7 levels of numbering. If you need this, you can come in here and see what they did and either copy all the styles over or just the ones that you need in your document, and then those are done. When I go back to the welcome screen, and this time I'm going to click on Outline Numeric, and I'll show a sample. Here's another example of complex numbering in FrameMaker. This one is carrying the previous numbers over. It's different from the one I just showed you. Both are multi-level numbers, but one hides the previous level, this one shows it. Same thing. If you need this, you can copy these styles into a document and then continue on. I'm back on the welcome screen again, and again, I'm going to click on Standard Template. And now I want to take you back up to the first template page. I'd click that up button until I get back to the first page, and there are 3 template sets here. The first is a reference card. You can see what that looks like if that's something you need to work on. Most of my students, when they're coming out of a FrameMaker class, are trying to figure out how to set up the first chapter of the first project. And they're either going to have to design it from scratch, or they're looking for a template that they can use. So there are 2 template groups in here that are meant for books. One is parts catalog, one is user guide. Again, they're looking for the first chapter, but notice that these templates also have a sample cover page and a legal document and contacts for front matter. They also have a sample table of contents template and a sample index template. They're all here, so you can use any of them if you like what they look like. Getting back to what my students are looking for, they're trying to figure out what they want that first chapter to look like. That's their first goal. So if I click on section, you can see that here's an example of what a chapter might look like in the parts catalog. I'm going to go ahead and show sample. And then I'm going to go back to the welcome screen, and I'm going to go to standard template. I'll do the same thing with the user guide. I'll just pick the one that's called chapter. This is section, this is chapter, names don't matter. Just going to open them both up and look at them side by side. So I have them both open. I can move between them by clicking the tabs on the tab bar, but I want to see them side by side. So I'll go to the window menu and I'm going to click tile. Unfortunately, the welcome screen wants to play, so I have to close it to get it out of there so I can see these 2 files side by side. And I'm going to put both of them in a fit page and window view. The way I'm doing that with the keyboard is I'm clicking on the page and typing consecutively Escape, Z for zoom, and P for page. And now I can compare them side by side. Now, starting at the top, the first thing that you might notice that's different is this one says section and this one says chapter. Not a big deal. That's a numbering property. If you don't like the wording, you can change it under the paragraph designer numbering properties. A bigger difference that's worth noting is that the one on the right, which is the user guide, is a side head format. It has that side head on the left, whereas the one on the left, again, that's the parts catalog, is a 1-column format. I'd be thinking probably more about that than worrying about the names that I see. Now, to go a little bit further, if you watch my paragraph catalog on the right, the parts catalog is meant for a simpler document. It doesn't have as many styles in that list as the user guide does. It's got more paragraph styles in there. So perhaps the complexity of the document would make a difference. And then you can figure out which one you think you want to use and go ahead and use it. Now, before we move on, let me just point out that if you're looking for a template that's going to work perfectly for your documentation, that wasn't designed specifically for you and your documentation, you probably aren't going to find it. I would like to think you'll get close to what you want. Look at these templates as a starting point. They don't have to be the end all. You don't have to use this exact format. You can always adapt these to do whatever it is you need them to do. And I want to show you an example of that. Now, I'm going to use the side head version. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to close the one that's a one column version. This is the parts catalog. I'm not going to save it. And then I'm going to open a file that you have seen in earlier webinars, if you've attended them. I've used a variation of this file for every single webinar. So going back a year and a half or so ago when I was hired for the first webinar, it was meant to be a 1-hour introduction for new FrameMaker users. And I can't use my clients' templates, and I just had to figure out what to do to teach these concepts. The template I chose was actually this one. Now I'm going to put my two side by side. And again, I'm choosing tile. Again, I've got to close the welcome screen because it always comes back, which is fine. I'm just going to close it. And as you look at the two side by side, here is what I was thinking about when I was designing that first webinar. I like this template overall. I wasn't a fan of that dark blue. For some reason, I felt like I wanted teal. So I went and I changed the color definition so that anything that was blue became teal. And then I looked at the way the text flows on the first page, and I thought, that's going to be confusing for a brand new FrameMaker user, and I don't want to scare them. Because the way this works is you put your cursor in this first frame, and when you press enter, it auto connects to the second frame. When you press enter, it auto connects down here. Didn't have a lot of time to talk about that. And so what I did is I went to the master page, went to the first master page, and I deleted these two frames, and I took this frame and just made it start taller. So that's why it looks like this. I made it into one frame. And then I just simplified the style. So it still says chapter 1, it has the same name. And now the content is very similar. As I scroll down, you can see that there's my heading 1, history of flight, same thing over here. Now I started removing content because, again, I was trying to keep it as simple as possible. So I started pulling out extra words. These are busy looking because they're using conditional text tags. I wasn't going to talk about that. So I got those out of there and I removed anything that was conditional. But you can see it's the exact same file. Now, the other thing I did at some point along the way in that first set of webinars is I changed the headers and footers because I wanted to talk about some features in FrameMaker, like how to pull content off the page. And so I just redesigned the headers and footers. I put the page numbers on the top outside corners rather than the bottom outside corners. And then I set up the footer so they would gather the chapter title and the headings and put them in the footer. It took me maybe 15 minutes to adapt this template to this one. Now, 15 minutes because I've done this for a really long time, but it's not a hard thing to change these. So if you find a template that you like, but it's not perfect, don't give up. You can still take it and adapt it to what you want. So that's what's happening here. I'm back in standard templates to say one more thing. If you decide that you like either the chapter template or the section template, I just want to point out that the supporting files that are in that group are going to go well with each of those. So if I click on cover, here's an example of a cover for the parts catalog. Legal might be for the front matter, like a preface. Maybe contacts is in the front matter. Maybe it goes in the back. There's also a table of contents template and an index template. And of course, you can see them before committing to them from right here. Same thing with the user guide. I'll just click through them. There's cover, there's legal. You can change these names. Doesn't have to say legal. Contacts, table of contents, and index. Now, in terms of my webinars, I didn't use any of the other ones because I wanted to have a similar look and feel to the supporting documents. So I just used that template I just showed you that I modified, saved it under a new name, and then I replaced contents. So I use that for the table of contents and the index and the list of figures. All these are detailed in the webinars you can find on YouTube. But I ended up not going back to the other templates that are in here. You can, it's really up to you. It was quicker for me to base them on the one that I had customized. Okay, so let's now go think about additional templates besides the ones we've already talked about. So it turns out that all templates that ship with FrameMaker are located in the folder you see here. It's in Program Files, Adobe, Adobe FrameMaker, and your version number in a subfolder called Templates. This includes the templates I just showed you through standard templates, but there are additional templates waiting for you to find them in that folder. You can also add your own templates to that folder if you want to, and then you can access them with the command New File from Template. To open up one of those files, you can just double click it, and FrameMaker will open up an untitled copy so you won't inadvertently overwrite the template if you begin to change it. Or you can copy a whole folder with all the sub-documents to a new location, rename them, and then begin to go from there. This might be new information for some of you who haven't delved that far into templates. So, New File from Template appears in 2 locations in FrameMaker. It's going to be on your welcome screen, just to the right of standard templates. If I click it, it's going to open up the new document dialog box, and it has a list of templates. I'm going to cancel and just show it to you the other way. Again, that's File, New, Document. And then I'm going to confess to you that I use FrameMaker for years and use this dialog box all the time, both for my own projects and to teach. I talked about portrait versus landscape versus custom versus standard templates and structured templates. Never even looked at the list in the middle. Just my eye went from the top to the bottom to new, and off I went. So let's pause for a second. And what you'll see in the middle are all of the templates. You can also see their location. I mentioned it on that slide, but here it is again. Program Files, Adobe, your version of FrameMaker, and the templates folder. They're all sitting there. And let's go back to perhaps the user guide, which I just showed you how to get to through standard templates. Here is the chapter file. And if I double click it, I just get an empty copy of that file, and I can start to put content in and go. Now, it doesn't have the thumbnail preview that standard templates gives us, and it doesn't have sample content in there like standard templates. But if you know you're going to use it, that's a quicker way to get to it than having to go through that standard templates dialog box. I'm going to close it. I'm going to go back and go up a level. And then there are a few additional templates in here, 2 of which I'm just going to point out. There's one called Modern Energy and one called Ship Guide. I'm going to double click Modern Energy, and you'll notice that it has all of the extra files that go along with a FrameMaker book, including an actual book file. What I'm looking for is just a chapter file, so I'll go for that one, Modern Energy. I'll let it open up. And then I'm going to return to the welcome screen, click that one more time, up a level. I'll go to Ship Guide, and same thing. I'm going to grab the GB version, and then I'm going to set them side by side with tile, and I'll have to close the welcome screen again. Now, these are the empty versions of the file. I'll be right back with some content in there. So here they are again. I just put some content from the other file in here and set up some of the paragraph styles so you can get a sense what's going on. As always, you might like some of the things about a template, but not everything. You can change anything you need to change in a template. So look at them as a starting point, give you some inspiration, and then take it and tweak it and make it look the way you like. I think these are both fun and different, and they're colorful, which is nice because for years, most of us didn't get to work with colorful documents because printing is so expensive when you're using color ink. But now that we're primarily producing content that's going to be viewed electronically, color is free. You use it, add it in there. And look, my favorite teal happens to be in both of those. That's just a coincidence. Now, from a paper size perspective, these are using international paper sizes. So the one on the left is using A4, and the one on the right is A5. For the Americans in the group, you know that we are very resistant to using the metric system. We have our own way of measuring things. So think of A4 as being roughly equivalent to letter size, and A5 as being roughly equivalent to half a letter size. So 8.5 by 5.5, which is another common size. Anyway, if you like these, they're in there along with their supporting files. So I think that's really cool. So how do we use this information now that we know that a template folder exists? Let me show you. I'm going to minimize FrameMaker and show you my desktop. And I have a shortcut to the templates folder. I'll just double click it. And that's going to open up the same folder I was just showing you through FrameMaker's new document dialog box. It has all the same content. This is just a regular folder. You can remove content, you can add content, you can rename things, whatever you like. And let's say that you decide that you want to work with a modern energy template set. What you can do, besides just opening up the individual files and putting it together, is you can actually make a copy of it and put it someplace else. So I'm going to drag it to my desktop. Now, if I just drag it, it says move to desktop, and I don't want to take it out of FrameMaker. I'm going to hold the control key. Because when I hold the control key, it tells Windows to copy the item to the desktop. And when I let go, I've got it in both places. I've got a copy on my desktop, but it's still available to FrameMaker. So I'll close it. And I'm going to go ahead and open up that folder. And as I showed you, it has all of the component files for using this in a book scenario, including an actual book file. So if the naming works, I can just open it up here. If not, we can rename everything right now before we go in. If you're not working on modern energy, but something different, you can give it a different name. If you're going to rename something, you do it before you get into FrameMaker, or you do it from inside of FrameMaker, one or the other. But right now, let's go ahead and just leave it as it is. I'm going to open up the book. And again, here are all the files. The generated files, no, they're generated files. They have their orange and black icons. They are compliant with the rules that FrameMaker forces us to use for generated files. The generated files always have to be the book name, which is Modern Energy Book, along with the suffix for that kind of a generated file, .fm. So they're all in there ready to go. There's a table of contents, index, list of figures, list of references. And then when you're ready to start working, you can open up Modern Energy, maybe save it as a copy so you have that one ready to go for the next chapter. Put in the content, add it to your book, open that one up, add the content, save it under a new name, add it to your book, and you can very quickly get up and running once you know about that folder location. So after looking at all of the templates that come with FrameMaker, let's say that you're still on the hunt. You're still looking for the perfect template. Well, templates are available for sale. One of my colleagues, Bjorn Smallbro in Denmark, creates templates. He does template development work for companies as well as commercial template development work that he has for sale on his website. His site is framemaker.dk. And what I'm going to do is take you there now to show you where his templates are, in case you like any of those. If you do, you can purchase them. And then I want to show you how to install a downloaded template. On Bjorn's site, this is framemaker.dk. He offers graphic design services and FrameMaker training services and resources and a blog. But I'm on his FrameMaker template shop. And this is where he has templates for sale. A new one that was just released relatively recently is the Anejo 2. It's an A4 template, again, for the Americans in the webinar today. A4 is close to 8.5 by 11 letter size, but it's not. It's an international paper size. You can modify any of these templates as well as any other template. So you have his permission to purchase it and modify it. You can see what it contains, how the headings, different levels of headings and bullets and styles and cross-reference formats, etc. There's some pictures that give you a sense of what it's going to look like. And then what's important to some of you is the HTML5 export. His templates are geared towards an HTML5 export as well as for PDF and print. And so it's going to look very similar to the template look and feel when you export to HTML5. he's got 2 pages of templates, and something that the two of us have in common is our love for tequila, good tequila. He's actually named his various templates after tequila. So Añejo, for example. Now, while I'm down here, he's got some free add-on designs for the one I'm going to show you. I've got those downloaded as well. But if you purchase the main template pack, you can then access this for free. And the add-ons are going to have additional specifications to handle tables and figures. Okay, so let's say you find a template from this site or someplace else and you want to install it in FrameMaker. That's next. I'm back on my desktop and I'm going to use my shortcut to open the templates folder. And I'll put it over here. And then I've downloaded the Añejo 2 template. I unzipped it and put it in my demo files folder. And here it is right here. So to install a template into FrameMaker's template folder, it's as easy as drag and drop. I'm going to copy it. So I'll hold my control key down. Again, in Windows, control drag will copy. I'm going to drag it over to the folder and just drop it off. So now the template is installed in the templates folder. You can see it listed alphabetically, so it's at the top of the list. I want to show you that that now is going to be available within FrameMaker. So back in FrameMaker, I'll choose New File from Template. The File New Document dialog box opens, and of course, there is that template right there ready to go. I can double-click to open it, and I can see the various components that are necessary, including the book file and all the generated files that are all there ready to go. So that's an example of a professionally designed template that's been thought out all the way to the end, all the way through the HTML5 export. Now, I do want you to see what this looks like, so I'm going to go back to my folder. I meant back to my desktop, and then I'll reopen the folder that has the sample document. And this is just an example of what it would look like if it were actually in use. I'll go ahead and open up the book file. And then I'd like to open up all the files in the book and just give you a quick overview of what this looks like. Remember, to open up all files in a book, you hold the Shift key, go to File, and then choose Open All Files in Book. So now I can just flip through the various pages to let you see what it looks like. And then, as I mentioned, this is ready to export to HTML5. And so if that's something you want to do, you can select the book, head over to the Publish pod, make sure the book is selected, and then export to HTML5. And I'm going to go ahead and click on View Output. And here we are. So you can see that the content is converting. It has a very similar look and feel to the actual FrameMaker document. I'm just clicking randomly around here. But again, this is an example of a professional template that was designed all the way to the end, all the way to the final output if HTML5 is where you want to go. So let's say you've looked at all the available templates out there, the ones that come with FrameMaker, the ones you can buy, maybe some that are sitting around from years ago, and you don't want to use any of them, you just want to start over. That's perfectly fine. This is my checklist, and I'll come back to this in just a few minutes. But the way I approach template design is I ask the client for sample documents so I can see exactly what is inside those files. For example, I'm now back in FrameMaker and I'm showing you a completed chapter. Again, this is the file that I've been using in the other webinars. But what I would do if I were working with a client and not, in a 1-hour webinar where all time is so very short, is I begin to go by going to File, and I would choose a new document. I'd probably start with Custom because that's going to allow me to customize what the page is going to look like. And I work with the client to come up with the paper size and the margins and the columns. Is it going to be single-sided or double-sided? Should it have a right first page or should it be the next available page? How are we measuring things? We're using inches or another unit of measure. Once I get that set up, then I'm going to put in the content that I got from the client as much as I can. And if it's not all in a single file, I'll take one file, the most complicated file I can find, put that content in, and then I'll grab elements from other files that might not appear in that one and put them at the end so that I can design for those, and then I can just remove them when I'm done. But after I get the paper size set up, I'm then going to go think about the content. So I start figuring out what my paragraph styles are going to look like, and my character styles, and table styles. And if I'm using object styles, which are specifically to control the look of frames and graphics, I'm going to get all those set up. At some point, and of course I'm doing that with the paragraph catalog and the paragraph designer, character catalog and designer, table catalog and designer, and object style catalog and designer. Once those are set up, I'm going to start working on the master pages. So I'd go to the view menu and master pages. I'd start adding in my variables for page numbers. And if the client wants me to have revision number, or if they want to have content that comes from the page, I start getting all those set up on the master pages. I would also consider how the first page is going to look, because usually we have a different look for the opening page of a document. So I might need to make some custom master pages to handle those. I would then navigate to the reference pages and figure out what's going on over there on the reference pages. If there are things I don't need, I can remove them. And on that note, we don't need, most of us do not need the HTML mapping tables anymore. These are from the 1990s HTML export. I showed you an example of how we create HTML files now with a publish pod in an earlier module. This represents where we did it in the 90s, and we don't need these anymore. So I would clear these out of the template. Just get the content out and then delete those pages, and then add in any other reference page items I might want. Now, I'm talking about a blank document, so let me go back over here so it's a little bit more visual for you. I'll show you my master pages because these actually, there's content here. This is my first master, and then I have my left and right master pages. So I would get all those set up. Then I would head over to the reference pages. The HTML mapping tables have been removed from this document, but there's a master page mapping table so that I can automatically map my custom master page to a particular paragraph tag. In this case, the master page called first is attached to heading 0. Frequently used elements appear on this right page in this template. And then this particular template also has a reference page for the table of contents and one for the index. Those can be in the document, because if you then create a table of contents for the first time, FrameMaker will actually look in that document and see if there's a page for it to use, and it will use the instructions from here so that it generates correctly the first time. That's another little generated files trick, that you can set up the reference pages in the template file. So that's interesting and good to know. I'm going to head now back over to the body pages. I would be thinking about the colors. In this case, remember I said I wanted to use teal. I set the colors up by going to the View menu, Color Definitions. And this is going to show the existing colors. My corporate color primary is teal, but I could come in secondary and I could pick some other color. I don't think green's going to look good with teal, but I could play with these colors until I find something that I like. And then I could have that color as part of my color palette. I'm going to consider my variables. So the variables pod is where we set up two kinds of variables. We have system variables that are built into the system, built into FrameMaker. You can use them, you can modify them, you can ignore them, but you cannot remove them. We use system variables for things like the page numbers and the running header footers and the revision numbers. You also can have user variables. And actually, a revision number is a better example of a user variable, where you define the number as a user variable. At any rate, I'm looking for anything that is in the document that's likely to change, and I'm setting up my variables. And then I want to set up my cross-reference formats. Now, these are cross-references. If I double-click one, it'll open up the cross-reference panel, and I'll look at all the cross-references that are going to be part of a document and set up all those cross-reference formats so that all the wording for every possible cross-reference is in there. Again, if it's not in the chapter they gave me, I look at the other chapters and I go to the end of the document and I put them in there to test them and make sure they're working so that they're in there. So that's cross-references. If we're using equations, and I've got a client that uses equations, I'll set the equations up. Most people that I talk to don't care about equations in FrameMaker these days. Small group cares a lot. The rest don't care at all. And potentially condition tags. So if I've got a conditional text document where I've got different versions, maybe the general description applies to 3 different products, but there are things in this general description that are unique to one product or another. I can have condition tags that I can hide and show that are product specific. That goes in the template. If I'm using footnotes, I want to decide what the footnotes are going to look like. I'll add a footnote and I'll format it, make sure it looks the way I want. If there are table footnotes, I'm going to put some table footnotes in, make sure they're okay, and look the way I want. And then I'm going to give this file to the client, and I want them to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Tell me everything they don't like, and work with me back and forth until they love what it looks like. I've addressed one of everything that comes up in the document. They can see it with their text and see exactly what's happening. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that file. So I don't think I changed anything in here, but I would go and I would save that file. And then I would save it as a new name. So I'd save it first, and then I'll choose Save As. And this is part of a spaceship book. So I might go ahead and call it Spaceship Template. The word template does not need to be in there. I'll just do it now so we can see it. But spaceship would be fine. And then it's just a regular FrameMaker document. Now think about that for just a second. Programs like Word and InDesign have their own template formats. They have their own extensions and they have their own formats. When you're creating a template in those programs, you're saving into a different file format. FrameMaker doesn't do that. It just uses the FrameMaker extension. So I'm just going to make it a FrameMaker 2022 document. I'm going to click Save. And then what I would do is I would remove all of the content. So I'll click in here. I'll go to the Edit menu. I'm going to pick Select All in Flow and then press Delete. Now it leaves some mess on my screen, and that's not really there. I know you're looking at it thinking, yes, it is, but that's just a refresh issue. So I'll go to Window menu and choose Refresh, or Control L is our shortcut. And then because the last thing on the last page of that chapter was a lettered list, it puts that as the first style. And I would want to come over here to my template and go find my heading 0 and assign that. So we start out with the chapter number. And then I would save it again. And that becomes my template. Now I can start putting in content, and I'll just say, for example, sample title. Now this particular template has the footer showing the sample title. I can wait for it to show up, or I can just be in a hurry and tap Control L for refresh. And the title appears right down there. When I press the Enter key, I could type in body text, pretend that's real text, press the Enter key, and maybe this is going to be a sample head 1. And I can come over here and I can say, hey, you're supposed to be a head 1. Now, again, this template is going to pull that content down here. So when I click on head 1, it formats it, and then eventually, or if I refresh, I can make it do it now, that shows up. And that's all it is for a template. The way I approach this is I just make a chapter, address one of everything, get the client to sign off on it, I don't want to have changes after I'm past that point. So we go back and forth as long as necessary. Then I save it as that template. Now, I'm going to delete all the content that was unique to this template, put it back to a head 0, and save it one more time. And then I would actually add it to the FrameMaker templates folder so that I can just get a copy of it, if that's how I want to do it, each time I'm ready to use it. So for that, I need to go back to my desktop, and it's in my demo files folder. I'll open that up. Now I have that file open still. That's why I have an LCK file. That's not a great practice. I should go back to FrameMaker and close the template before I move it. So I'll go ahead and do that. And I'll open up my templates folder with my shortcut. And then I can just copy that right on in. Control drag. It shows up in the list. And so now when I return to FrameMaker and I choose New from Template, it's sitting right there. And if I want to create a new file based on that template, all I need to do is double click it. FrameMaker will open up a copy of this file, and I can then begin to add the content. And so that's how you make your own templates. Let's go back to the list, my checklist, so you can get a screenshot of that. So this is my checklist. Again, consider taking a screenshot. These are the things you want to have in your template, along with reminder to ask for one of every possible element that goes in that file. At least one table or one of each kind of table. If there's footnotes, you want to look, see what the footnotes are going to look like. You want one of everything. You want to address everything. I do it in conjunction with designing a chapter because it lets the client see exactly what they're going to get with their own content. That works great for me. So once you've got your template set up, wherever you got it from, whether you made it yourself or found it or bought it or whatever, you want to make sure you protect it. Have several copies of your template someplace safe. You might put it on a thumb drive and put it in a drawer so that those are that safe, or put it on a cloud drive. Some offices will set their shared templates to read only, so someone can't override it. Now, those people probably don't know how to pull the template into the templates folder, which does protect it from us, unless your hard drive crashes. That's why you want other copies of it. But if you're opening it up from the file New from Template avenue, when you double click it, you're going to get a copy, so it is safe. But just think about those templates and keep them protected. And remember that the reason we're using templates is because we're trying to gain consistency in our layout. Consistency amongst our own documents. If we're the only person working, you want to look the same from the beginning to the end. In a workgroup environment, even more important, you really don't want to use overrides. You don't want to create more styles for special situations. You want the template to address everything. And then you explain that to someone who's not familiar with the template and tell them, these are your choices. Stick within these choices. And that's going to give you the consistency that you need. Okay, so before I say goodbye, remember I am Barb Binder. My company is Rocky Mountain Training. I do template development. I also offer training classes. I have a 2-day introduction to Adobe FrameMaker and a 2-day advanced Adobe FrameMaker. I also offer custom training and online one-on-one coaching. If you have just a few questions, you can get me for an hour or two. The best way to get answers to your questions on templates or anything else on FrameMaker is to go to the Adobe Community Forums. That's going to take you to the FrameMaker forum where you can ask any number of us your questions. We like all questions, hard questions, easy questions, the ones in the middle. Always happy to answer them. If you need to reach me, of course, there's my email. You can also reach out to me, but you usually get a faster answer to a question on the forums than if you reach me directly because I'm in class during the day. So thanks again for joining us. We have more webinars coming up next year in 2024. Keep your eye out for those. They'll get announced soon. Thanks, everybody.